Moses. We're in the book of Joshua. We're at chapter 22. And you might think, oh me, after all we covered last week, just one chapter? Well, when we look at this chapter, there's a lot to commend it to us, a lot that will help us develop as Christians and be better prepared to do the things that we ought to do. So let's begin by looking at verses 1 through 4. Then the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites, I skipped the wrong chapter. Joshua called the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the tribe of Manasseh, and said to them, "You've kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, and have obeyed my voice in all that I commanded you. You've not left your brethren these many days up to this day, but have kept the charge of the commandment of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God has given rest to your brethren as he promised them. Now therefore return and go to your tents and to the land of your possession, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan." Okay, Joshua commends them for their faithfulness, and the instructions actually come from Numbers chapter 32, if you want to tie in a little bit there. Numbers chapter 32, you begin at verse 20, and you'll see what happened, because remember, they asked if they could stay on that side because they were herdsmen, and they liked the land. It looked good, to them. And so beginning at verse 20 of Numbers 32, then Moses said to them, "If you do this thing, if you arm yourselves before the Lord for the war, and all your armed men cross over the Jordan before the Lord until he's driven out his enemies from before him, and the land is subdued before the Lord, then afterward you may return and be blameless before the Lord and before Israel, and this land shall be your possession before the Lord. But if you do not do so, then take note, you've sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. Build cities for your little ones, and folds for your sheep, and do what has proceeded out of your mouth." And the children of Gad and the children of Reuben spoke to Moses, saying, "Your servants will do as my Lord commands. Our little ones, our wives, our flocks, and all our livestock will be there in the cities of Gilead. But your servants will cross over, every man armed for war, before the Lord to battle, just as my Lord says." So Moses gave instructions. The instructions come from God. If you don't do this, God's going to find you out. And we learned, of course, at AI that God doesn't have any trouble finding it out. He's ahead of the game, compared to what human beings would be. And so they've been properly warned. They did build areas for their own families to settle in while they went off to war. And they're going to be gone about 7 years or so. It's a rough span of time. 38 years in wilderness wandering, that throws everybody off. It took them 2 years to get to the border the first time. 38 more years in the wilderness. That whole generation died except for Joshua and Caleb. Those two did not die. And so we've got the 38 years and how old, as we saw last week, talking about Caleb a little bit a week before. Talking about Caleb, we noted that with given his age, 85, that there you do a little bit of subtraction. He was 40, so 85 minus 45. Really when they got there, and then you minus 7, and you end up with 7 years. That's how long it took. I know that's very confusing, but I promise you I could do that if I sat down with a piece of paper and a pencil. Okay, so 7 years, they're gone. Their families take care of themselves those 7 years. And now, remember what he said? You do this until the Lord subdues the land. What does the writer say in the book of Joshua? They had rest. So the land is subdued, isn't it? And so now Joshua says, you've been faithful, and so go. Now, what I do want to notice from Hebrews chapter 13, chapter 3, may sound a little bit strange. But in Hebrews chapter 3, this is the negative side of what I want to talk about. Notice verses 18 and 19. And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest, but to those who did not obey? So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief. Or unbelief or unfaithfulness is equivalent to disobedience. So I want to do the flip side, because the 2.5 tribes did the flip side, didn't they? That would mean that obedience is equivalent to acting on what the Lord said. Obey Him, and then that is considered faithfulness. And so they were faithful, they're commended for being faithful, and they're told that they can go. Now, verse 5 of Joshua, chapter 22, we find Joshua giving them this charge, if you would, a parting charge. But take care, but take careful heed to do the commandment and the law which Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in His ways, to keep His commandments, to hold fast to Him, and to serve Him with all your heart and with all your soul. Okay, I want us to do something. In my Bible, I've underlined this. You don't have to. It's up to you. But watch these words here. We have action words. Do, love, walk, keep, hold, serve. 6 action words in this charge. And I want to continue to emphasize, we've already done this, when you are truly a person that believes in God, you are active in your obedience. Never is faith in pleasing God an inactive thing. It's always active. And you see that in the charge that Joshua gives to the 2.5 tribes as they get ready to go.
One of the key verses of the book of Joshua right there too.
Yeah, a very important, Mr. Bob said, very key verse here, and it is because this parting charge really, doesn't it effectively go to the whole nation later? You know, we get down to chapters 23 and 24, which we'll deal with, coming up. If you get to that, well, guess what? That's exactly where that goes, is with an active obedience. Well, He's given them a charge, so what else does He do? Pronounced their faithfulness, gave them a charge, and now He gives them a blessing. Verse 6, so Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents. Now, it appears to me that if you read, for example, after the death of David and after the death of Solomon, and you get to the point in time where you're talking about the age of Rehoboam, do you remember what the people said? When they went to Rehoboam, and of course Jeroboam was out there as kind of an instigator, no doubt about that. And they said, we want you to lighten our load, and we want to know what you're going to do. We'll follow you if you lighten the load. And he said, give me 3 days, I'll tell you. He took the advice of the young men, bad idea, but he did, took their advice. And when they came back and they heard, no, I'm not going to lighten your load, I'm going to make it heavier. Then do you remember what the people said? Because that's where I'm really going here. What do we have to do with the house of David? To your tents, Israel. It means go home. Leave them alone. Okay, in this case, it's not negative. In that case, it would be, wouldn't it? In this case, it's a positive. Go to your tents. Go home, fellas. Go live with your families. You've been away from them 7 years. Go on, go back home. And he pronounced a blessing as they headed out on their journey home. Now, verses 7 and 8, he does give them a little bit of an instruction to go along with that. Now, to the half-tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given, a possession in Bashan. But to the other half of it, Joshua gave possession among their brethren on the side of the Jordan westward. And indeed, when Joshua sent them away to their tents, he blessed them and spoke to them, saying, return with much riches to your tents. See, go home, fellas. With very much livestock, with silver, with gold, with bronze, with iron, and with very much clothing. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brethren. So what are you going to do? All right, they've got all the spoil from war. Take it home. All right, some people had to stay at home, didn't they? These may be older men, non-fighting age. These men would be younger men who by now might be fighting age. Because they've been home 7 years. If a young man was, if he was as young as 13 when they went over, by now he's fighting age. He's ready to go. So what are you going to do about those folks? Well, there's a rule in Israel. It's a rule that comes, this is Numbers chapter 31. So you may want to look at that very quickly. This is when they had fought the Midianites. And Moses gave specific instructions beginning at verse 25. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, count up the plunder that was taken of man and beast, you and Eleazar the priest, and the chief fathers of the congregation, and divide the plunder into 2 parts between those who took part in the war, who went out to battle, and all the congregation. What's the rule? The spoil goes to everybody. Doesn't just go to the warriors. Now, David applies that. I don't know if you remember that, but they're living at Keilah, which they're hiding from Saul, what they're doing. Living at Keilah, they try to go to war with the Philistines, which that would have been interesting. If the Philistines would let David and his army go with them, that'd have been a whole different result, one would assume, but that wasn't to be. God had already said that Saul's going to lose the kingdom. And so while they're away and they get told, no, you can't go with us, the other Philistine commanders say, can't go, not going to do that. They go back home, and what do they find? Their home's been raided. Their wives are gone, all their things are gone. And so what do? They go to battle. But when they go to battle, certain men stay behind because they're too tired. And the others, there's 600 men with him, 400 go with him, 200 stay behind, take care of the stuff, their supplies. And they go off to battle, and when they come back, they bring back the wives and the children and all the goods that were stolen. And the 400 say, okay, here, you can take your wives and children, but we're keeping the spoil. And what does David say? Not going to do it that way. Because they also serve who stay with the, I'm going to say stuff. He says baggage. But the idea is they perform an important task. The other day I went through the line at one of the local grocery stores and come to find out one of the, they had one of those 5 for 5 deals going on. And one of the items I got wasn't included. I thought it was, but it wasn't. So I'd paid for my stuff. And I asked the young lady that was bagging, can I put this here and you watch it for me? Did she do a service to me? Yeah. Somebody could have walked out with my groceries, that I was getting ready to take home. I just went, as I told them, swapped out. So I got something that qualified, and then went back, got my bags, and went home. See, a person that stays with your stuff's performing an important function, aren't they? They're taking care of your things. And so they get rewarded. They're going to go home. What are they going to do? They're going to split things up. And everybody, even that stayed at home, gets a portion of it. So I think that's very significant. Another great lesson that's here. All right. So now let's look at verse 9. So the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh returned and departed from the children of Israel at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the country of Gilead, to the land of their possession, which they obtained according to the word of the Lord by the hand of Moses. What is at Shiloh at this point in time? The tabernacle is at Shiloh. So what happened at the tabernacle in what we studied last week? 7 tribes got their lot of land. Remember? They drew lots and they got their land, right? So when are these people leaving? It appears to me that they are leaving after not only there's rest, but the land's divided. Everybody's got their part. And now, you know as well as I do, they didn't do a good job with that. I'm talking about the people now, not God. God did a great job. But they didn't follow through, did they? They didn't drive everybody out. But as far as these 2.5 tribes, they've done their part. Everything's set up well. And could they have conquered the rest of what's in the land, those people that remain? You know they could have. In fact, you may remember that Joshua tells one of the protesting tribes, it's of Joseph's kin, Ephraim and Manasseh, they say, you didn't give us enough land. He said, well, go out and clear the land yourself. And said, those people with those chariots, you can beat them. Well, Joshua believed that, didn't he? Because he and Caleb were the ones that said, we can go over, God's on our side. We're going to win. So,
Plenty of room up in the mountains.
yeah, plenty of room in the mountains if they'd used it. That's what he said. So, these people, it appears to me, left after the division of the land. Is that right or wrong? I don't know. When we get to heaven, you can check. And if I'm wrong, if need be, I'll confess it then. That I didn't get it right. But that's what it looks like to me because of where it is done. Now, verse 10. And when they came to the region of the Jordan, which is in the land of Canaan, children of Reuben, children of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh built an altar there by the Jordan, a great, impressive altar. Now the children of Israel heard someone say, behold, the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh have built an altar on the frontier of the land of Canaan in the region of the Jordan on the children of Israel's side. And when the children of Israel heard of it, the whole congregation of the children of Israel gathered together at Shiloh to go to war against them. Okay, what's going on? Well, they erected an altar. There's a little bit of controversy. If you read those verses we just read, it sounds like they built the altar on the east side, but if you read on, and we're going to in a minute, it looks like they built it on the west side. So I take the west side view, but some people take the east side view. And look, if you invite me to lunch, I'm going to eat with you anyway if you disagree. Okay, so I'm just not worried about it. You know, it's one or the other. Obviously, it's at the Jordan. We know that, and it's there for a purpose. We're going to learn about that later. But they built an altar. Well, that upset the other tribes. Now, why would they be upset? Well, we're getting ready to find out. But the key element is God wants His people to worship at one altar. When you look at the God of the Bible, there's one thing that is underscored again and again. Brethren, I think we have failed to emphasize it enough. Unity. He always stresses unity. And you want to know why, or part of why, the non-religious people around us have no interest in following Christ. Part of the reason is because so many people claim to follow Christ, but they're totally divided. We need to stress unity. Now, how are we going to do that? I'm going to highlight something that's going to be a key part to not just today's Sunday morning sermon, but next Sunday and the next Sunday and the next Sunday. Back to the Bible. Back to the Bible. You want to find unity? Go to the Bible. You're not going to find it in men. Men will vote for one thing this year, and they'll come together in convention next year and vote against what they voted for last year. Now, if you don't believe that, I can show you that in the news stories in the last month. You don't have to go very far back to find it. And historically, you'll find it again and again. Things keep changing, all throughout history. When you follow men, when men vote, well, men are not consistent, are we? No, we're not. And I said we because I'm not consistent either. I know, I'm aware of that. Okay, but God wants unity. God stresses the idea of a oneness. So He has one altar. And now here they are down on the border, and they're building a giant altar. Well, now what do you think if you're the 9.5 tribes? They're getting ready to worship a false god. They're getting ready to worship in contradiction to the will of God. That's what they're thinking. So they come together at Shiloh, which will be where? That's before the Lord. Now, there's no indication they consulted the Lord, which I find intriguing, and yet the actions do sound like the Lord was behind them. And with Eliezer with them, I've got a suspicion he is behind them, but I can't prove it. Because there's no reference in the text that makes me know that. So look at verses 13 and 14. Then the children of Israel sent Phinehas, it's Phinehas, not Eliezer, the son of Eliezer, the priest, to the children of Reuben, to the children of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, into the land of Gilead. And with him 10 rulers, one ruler from the chief house of every tribe of Israel, and each one was the head of the house of his father among the divisions of people. All right, now, first of all, 10. There are only 9.5 tribes on that side. Well, but that half tribe's got a head, doesn't it? Yeah. So, 10 rulers, 10 leaders go to represent the people. Who's with them, or who are they with? They're with Phinehas, who already has proven himself to be very faithful to God. He's a good servant. His daddy Eliezer, who by the way is the son of Aaron, his daddy Eliezer is very faithful to God as well. And so these men are sent. They're a delegation, if you would. And their job is to go down before they go to war. Brethren, could we end a lot of controversy if before we went to war, put that in quotation marks, before we started to rip and tear at each other, we sat down and talked to one another? You think that might help? Well, it does here. I'll put it that way. Before you go to war, find out what's going on. Now, I don't know about you, but our children had a technique. They would go to Mama and they would say, would you let us do so-and-so? And she said, well, no, I'm not going to let you do that. And what did they do next? Well, since I wasn't in the room at the time, they came to me and they said, can we do? They didn't tell me what Mama said. What's their purpose? Well, to get us crosswise with each other and get what they want, right? All right. I'm going to tell you because I've sat in an office here and other places talking to people who have trouble in the home, and many, many times trouble comes because we don't understand each other. There's not been a clarity of position. And so what's the best thing to do? Well, let's get it clarified before we go to war with each other. Before we go to bed. And that's what they're doing. They're going to get clarification. So verses 15 and 16, we find, then they came to the children of Reuben, to the children of Gad, and to the half-tribe of Manasseh, to the land of Gilead. And they spoke with them, saying, thus says the whole congregation of the Lord, what treachery is this that you have committed against the God of Israel, to turn away this day from following the Lord, in that you have built for yourselves an altar that you might rebel this day against the Lord. You notice three words of accusation, or three ideas of accusation. Idea number one, treachery. Now, if you'll look in the margin of the New King James Version, it says unfaithful act. Now remember, what do we say an unfaithful act is? When you don't do what God says. That's unfaithful, right? Saw that in Hebrews earlier. Still the case right here. Number two, turn away. You're turning away from God. Number three, you're rebelling. These are strong words. And by the way, they get repeated. Just in case you wondered, they don't just use them once. They're making it clear. This is what we see you doing. Now, there's going to be a reason laid out for why that they lay this before them, and it comes as we go forward, verses 17 and 18. Is the iniquity of Peor not enough for us, from which we are not cleansed till this day? Although there was a plague in the congregation of the Lord, but that you must turn away this day from following the Lord, and it shall be, if you rebel today against the Lord, that tomorrow he'll be angry with the whole congregation of Israel. What happened at Peor? Balaam could not curse Israel. God wouldn't let him. But Balaam explained to Balak, it looked to me like as the more you study Balaam was more interested in the money than he was in doing the will of God. Now, you may not agree, but that's what I see as I look at it. Okay, so what did he do? Went to Balak and he said, listen, I can tell you, I can't curse them because God won't let me. But you can arrange for them to get themselves cursed. How are you going to do it? Well, you just let your enticing women go involve the men of Israel in sin, and that's what they did. Now, these women of the foreign lands worshipped a false god, and really they worshipped two in particular. They worshipped Baal and they worshipped Asherah, and really those are multiples. There are multiple Baals and multiple Asherahs. But I can tell you one thing's true about both of them. Baal is a male god. Asherah is a female god or goddess. And both of them are of fertility. So guess what the worship of these false gods is? It is sexual immorality. So Balaam got them in trouble, and the sin, now did everybody commit sexual immorality? No. They didn't all commit, but God was angry with the whole nation. And as a result, 24,000 people died because of what went on. That's Numbers 25, tells that story for us so that we know. It's interesting to me that Phinehas says that Israel was not free from that sin even while he was speaking. And you've got to wonder about that. I'm going to give you a possible reason he might have said that. Because their heart is still susceptible to that. Now, why do I say that? Well, study the next part of the history of Israel. What do they get involved in? You get into the book of Judges, you're going to see them get involved in that same sin, same nature of sin that they were involved in at Peor. An involvement with the false gods and goddesses, and therefore sexual immorality, and it leads to trouble. So maybe that's what he's talking about. Is it? I don't know. That's my answer. You're welcome to come up with your own. As long as it fits within the reasonableness of the text, okay. I'm not going to argue with you. I don't know, about that. But that's my answer to why. What the plague had been stayed, and he mentions the plague. The plague was stopped, but the potential of reigniting God's anger was always there. All you had to do is go right back down that same road if you wanted to get God angry. And I don't know about you, but as a child, I came to find out some things that if you didn't want Mom to be angry with you, you just didn't do them. Now, sometimes I had to do them 2 or 3 times to figure that out. And she exercised the power of the bolo paddle, to remind me of what her rule was or what her thinking was on that. Phineas is saying, God can do that too. God can use the bolo paddle. Now, it's more serious than that, isn't it? But God can do that, and that's one thing that he mentions. All right, go on, verses 19 and 20. Nevertheless, if the land of your possession is unclean, then cross over to the land of the possession of the Lord, where the Lord's tabernacle stands, and take possession among us. But do not rebel, here comes that word, we've already seen the other two, against the Lord, nor rebel against us by building yourselves an altar besides the altar of the Lord our God. Did not Achan, the son of Zerah, commit a trespass in the accursed thing, and wrath fell on all the congregation of Israel? And that man did not perish alone in his iniquity. What's the point? When one man violated the law of God, the whole congregation suffered. What's going to happen when 2.5 tribes do it? That's pretty easy, don't you think? The whole congregation will suffer. So Phinehas has used 2 historical points to make his argument. I want to make 2 observations. Number 1, we need to study the Bible to understand the history of God's dealings with man. Why is the Old Testament there? It's there so that we know how God will react in certain circumstances when man responds to him in a certain way. That's why it's there. And you won't say, prove it. Well, that's easy. Romans chapter 15, verses 3 and 4, and 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Both of those tell us these things are written down so that we can learn. We, brethren, ought to become a people more knowledgeable in the history of God's dealings with man. We need to study the Old Testament. There are brethren that say we don't have anything to do with it. Well, the Old Testament's not a law for us. But show me any place where you can better see the way God interacts with people than the Old Testament. And that's exactly why He left it for us. It's exactly why. Now, I want to make a second point, non-biblical. When any nation forgets their history, they're going to pay for it. Doesn't matter who they are. We're not unique. If we forget our history, we're going to pay for it. And I'll leave it at that. You can make applications of your own. So, the problem's been set out there. And do you notice what the 9.5 tribes think? They think the 2.5 tribes are building an altar to worship in contradiction to the will of God. There's only one altar. And they think they're violating that. So here comes the answer. Begin at verse 21. Then the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh answered and said to the heads of the divisions of Israel, the Lord God of gods, the Lord God of gods, He knows, and let Israel itself know. If it is in rebellion or if in treachery against the Lord, do not save us this day. By the way, do you notice they picked up the words? They understood what the charge was. And they said, if we're guilty, then don't hesitate to punish us. See, by the way, Kyle and Delich, who knew, they understood Hebrew. I don't understand Hebrew. I have to look it up in the dictionary. Well, lexicon, but same difference, to know what they are. But they say that these 2.5 tribes use all 3 names for God, the powerful names. One, El, which means mighty one. Elohim, which is the plural of, that's the plural power. And then Yahweh, which you'll see here, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. That's YHWH, what that is. So they used all 3 of those at this spot. They know that God knows. That's the point. So go ahead. Verse 23. If we have built ourselves an altar to turn from following the Lord, or if to offer on it burnt offerings or grain offerings, or if to offer peace offerings on it, let the Lord himself require an account. In other words, they're basically saying we're calling down God's judgment on us if that was our reason. That's pretty powerful. May God, effectively, may God himself strike us dead if we did it. And they're serious. They mean what they're saying here. So that's through verse 23. Pick up at 24. But in fact, we have done it for fear, for a reason, saying, in time to come, your descendants may speak to our descendants, saying, what have you to do with the Lord God of Israel? For the Lord has made the Jordan a border between you and us. You children of Reuben and children of Gad, you have no part in the Lord. So your descendants would make our descendants cease fearing the Lord. Therefore we said, let us now prepare to build ourselves an altar, not for burnt offering, nor for sacrifice, but that it may be a witness between you and us and our generations after us, that we may perform the service of the Lord before him with our burnt offerings, with our sacrifices, and with our peace offerings, that your descendants may not say to our descendants in time to come, you have no part in the Lord. Therefore we said that it will be when they say this to us or to our generations in time to come, that we may say, here is the replica of the altar of the Lord which our fathers made, though not for burnt offerings, nor for sacrifices, but it is a witness between you and us. What are they building the altar for? We're reminding generations to come we're one people. We serve at one altar. This is just a replica. We're not going to offer. And it's interesting. There are other things in Scripture, like, for example, the brass serpent. The Israelites turned that into something to worship. Just as an example.
Repeating that termination 2 times kind of half-ended for them, did it?
Yeah, it did. They let it be known very clearly, Mr. Bob is indicating. So what's the point? There are other cases where something that had an originally good purpose is turned into a bad purpose. But this altar, to my knowledge, nowhere in the Old Testament is this altar ever used in a bad way. It always stands for exactly what it was intended to stand for. We're one people. Now, other things will change that, but not this altar. This altar's got its purpose, and it's always used for the right purpose. So that's their answer that they give to them in reference to why build an altar. So now, how are the others going to respond? Verse 29 concludes, far be it from us that we should rebel against the Lord and turn away from following the Lord this day, to build an altar for burnt offerings, for grain offerings, or for sacrifices, besides the altar of the Lord our God, which is before his tabernacle. Where's the one altar of Israel? That's easy. Shiloh. That's right now. Now later it'll change, but right now, Shiloh. And they said, that's where we're going to worship. That's what we intend to do. We're following the will of God. That's their message. So, having said that, pick up at verse 30 and listen. Now when Phinehas, the priest, and the rulers of the congregation, the heads of the divisions of Israel, who were with him, heard the words that the children of Reuben, children of Gad, and the children of Manasseh spoke, it pleased them. Well, it should have. Because they're saying we're going to do the will of God. That's our purpose here. And that's the only purpose. Verse 31. Then Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, said to the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the children of Manasseh, this day we perceive that the Lord is among us, because you have not committed this treachery against the Lord. Now you've delivered the children of Israel out of the hand of the Lord. See, their fear was, if you do wrong, God will punish all of us. They come along and say, no, our fear is that you're going to separate us and our children won't get to be part of this great nation. And with that answer, Phinehas says, you've delivered us. Well, did they really? Not really. But it looked like that what they thought was it would deliver them because they thought they were going to do wrong. And what they're saying is they're happy. They're happy because their reasoning, their thinking is correct. So verse 32 and 33. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, and the rulers returned from the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, from the land of Gilead to the land of Canaan, to the children of Israel, and brought back word to them. So the thing pleased the children of Israel, and the children of Israel blessed God. They spoke no more of going against them in battle to destroy the land where the children of Reuben and Gad dwelt. Here's the other thing. If you ever, and we do it, all of us do it, if you ever give a wrong report to somebody by accident, it may have been what you thought was true. If you discover you were wrong, what should you do? Go back and correct it. I don't even remember what it was. Mitzi likes professional football mostly, being honest about it. But in Mississippi State, anything Mississippi State she likes. I don't remember what I told her. Something I had read in the news, but I told her wrong. Mitzi may remember. I don't remember what it was. But I'll tell you what, the next day I went to her and said, got it wrong. It was this, whatever this was. I don't remember. That's the way it ought to be. Of course, that was irrelevant. I mean, really, if I got something wrong about Mississippi State, it wasn't negative, I can tell you that. But I wanted it corrected. I wanted the understanding to be there. It may have been, I don't think it was the Packers. If it had been the Packers, she probably would have attacked me. But at any rate, straighten it out, brethren. When you know you've said something wrong, go straighten it out. We end up in more fights over stupid things because we don't have enough personal honor and integrity to admit I was wrong. And we all have been, haven't we? On one occasion or another, we have been. All right, last verse 34. Then the children of Reuben, children of Gad, called the altar witness. For it is witness between us that the Lord is God. And He's not just God of the 9.5 tribes. He's God of the 12 tribes, all of them. Yes, sir.
Do you think, Gary, that this is probably a great problem for us as well, whether we're right or whether we're wrong, and we misjudge people about what their intentions are? We can't see their heart. We don't really know what they're thinking or what their intent was. Maybe their intent needs to be corrected a little bit.
Yeah.
But whatever, and as a result of that, people make a statement. They're not willing to change the statement.
Right.
They want to stick with their statement. I'm right, you're wrong, and I think that creates a lot of problems.
It does. The point that's being made simply is that we make mistakes when we judge intentions. This is one reason when I talk to people that are having difficulties, I will urge to them, tell the other person, I feel like you did this. Not, you did it. I don't know. What they meant to do. My wife's never done this, but if I gave her a rose and she pricked her finger and said, you gave me that rose because you knew I'd prick my finger. No. You could say, I feel like you did, and that would be okay. But you can't know why I did it until I tell you why. You can't read my heart till I tell you why. I can't read your heart till you tell me why. Don't judge motives, find out the truth, and go forward together. All right, next week, Lord willing, chapter 23.